Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me? Okay, that's important because it's actually what I want to talk about is the mitzvah of hearing. It could be said that the primary mitzvah is to listen. Not necessarily to hear, but to listen. Shema. Hear, O Israel. These words are so impressed upon us that we speak them like a prayer. But it's really a mitzvah, a commandment to listen, a sacred obligation. I once knew a young woman who was deaf since childhood. She was very bright, and she asked if I would be her rabbi and her teacher. And of course, the way it often goes between teachers and students, I ended up learning more from her, I think, than she's from me. She ended up moving to New York City, and then she had a cochlear implant. And when she woke up from the surgery and could hear for the very first time, she said she actually experienced it like electricity running through her whole body, that it was less about her ears and more a physical experience, an embodiment of hearing. It was so powerful that it shook her to the core. They say it was like that for all of us at Mount Sinai, when we heard God's voice unfiltered. We hear an echo of that voice if we listen. Certainly an echo of that voice when we hear the shofar. That ancient sound can be enough to rattle us out of our everyday. If we listen, if we really listen, we can be changed by it. When we concentrate to hear the words of a great teacher, or to hear the words of an elder who has life wisdom, or to hear the words of an extraordinary piece of music, or to hear the words of a child or a dear friend. Those words that sound can impact us in such a way that we are forever changed by them. We can integrate those sounds into our consciousness, into our conscience, sometimes subtly, sometimes profoundly. So let me ask you this question. It's a matter of opinion. Do you think the Jewish people are better at action or at listening? How many would say Jews are better at doing, at acting? That's a lot of hands. How many would say Jews are better at listening? Okay, the minority view, also important. Well, of course, you know we are commanded to do both, to act in the world and to listen for God's voice and listen to one another. This week's Torah portion begs a question of how action and listening interplay, how these two mitzvot work together. The moment that the Jewish people became a people was when we stood at the foot of Mount Sinai and we responded to God's call with two words, na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. And those two words, na'aseh v'nishma, launched the Jewish people into history. It can be said that this is our approach, right? The majority view was that Jews are better at doing, at action. And so it might not surprise you that we responded to God's call by saying, na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. That's what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of blessed memory says is required of us as Jews, that we are to take a leap of action. We are the people who might not take a leap of faith, but a leap of action, that we know how to do. And through our actions, then comes discernment, hearing, understanding. But in this week's Torah portion, with a careful reading, you might be surprised to see that not once, not twice, but 3 times these commandments are offered to us in the opposite order. God says, Shema Yisrael, listen, O Israel, to the laws and rules that I pronounce into your ears today. Study them, take care of them, la'asotam, and do them. The first instruction is to listen and then to fulfill. Next, the heads of the tribes and the elders speak on behalf of the people, pledging to echo the mitzvot. V'shamanu ve'asinu. We will listen and we will do. And a third time the instruction is reinforced for emphasis and for clarity. V'shamata Yisrael, v'shamarta la'asot. Listen, O Israel, and take care to do as the eternal God, the one of your ancestors, has spoken. So what is meant by this reversal? Why has the emphasis shifted here in the book of Deuteronomy? Perhaps it comes to teach that while the Sinai moment required an immediate, even an impulsive, spontaneous leap of action, now that our 40 years of wandering the wilderness is coming to conclusion, now that we find ourselves sitting at the edge of the land of Israel, something else is required. Perhaps na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, is what is necessary first to establish the covenant, but then na'aseh, then nishma v'na'aseh, we will listen and we will do, is what is required in order to maintain the covenant. Just consider how relationships develop. Friendships are established, usually by proving ourselves through actions, by how we show up for one another. But then as relationships carry on, as friendships deepen and are enriched, we find that with the passing of time, it's the listening that matters most. How do we hear one another? How carefully do we listen to one another? Do we listen with empathy and full attention so that we feel acknowledged and heard? Yes, it's important to know when and how to act, how to respond appropriately, but only after hearing. That's the true mark of a loyal friend. Now, our dear Holy Blossom Temple is known for being a place of action. Would you agree? Yes, and we're proud of that identity, we're proud of that history, and we will continue to play that role, to carry that responsibility. I do think that we are getting better at listening. I do think programs like this summer gathering, like the Monday program, like the new program headed up by Mark Schlossberg and Rabbi Sachs, where we go into assisted living residences for Kabbalat Shabbat, to welcome in Shabbat with our congregants there. All these moments of connection require listening, not only a leap of action of showing up and being there, but also paying attention to one another's needs and hearing one another's stories. And that's true at every stage of life, by the way. At Holy Blossom Temple now, we are launching a new program for our teenagers called Moving Traditions, where once a month they gather with mentors, actually young men and young women, uniquely gathering with their own mentors, so that they can speak about how hard it is to be a teenager today, and that they can get good guidance about how to make their way through with all the pressures of the teenage years. So at every stage of life, we're getting better at listening to one another. And I want you to know that the new spaces that will almost be ours will help us to do this too. Just beyond that wall is a tremendous open space that will take us 4 stories of open space, a glass ceiling, and a courtyard, and a spiral staircase, and balconies strung on every level, so that it's all open to us. Our atrium will be the gathering place where we can linger in one another's company and hear each other's stories and be there for one another in a responsive kind of way. I cannot wait. We'll have to wait, but not too much longer, I assure you. Because if I've learned anything from you, it's that synagogue life is very personal. When the synagogue lets us down in one way or another, we never forget it. When we are there for one another and feel supported by one another, we never forget it. Synagogue life is highly personal when we acknowledge our stories, when we share our stories with one another, we know it. Whether someone is a new member of our congregation or a multi-generational member of our congregation, everyone's attachment here matters, is highly layered with meaning and purpose. The synagogue community is treated like family. I'm no longer surprised when someone comes and tells me that they were surprised at how moved they were to meet a fellow congregant. I'll share one story. A volunteer learned of a family in crisis. She doesn't know this family, but she went with a meal delivered to the door. And the father of that young family in crisis invited her in, and they immediately began to speak about the most important things in life. It wasn't the hi, how are you niceties of etiquette. It was a meaningful, deep conversation that I believe can uniquely happen in synagogue relationships. And the volunteer told me how surprised she was. She said, I don't even know them. But I am no longer surprised at how these relationships can take hold and can be life-changing. These are the expressions that one Jew can have for one another, one congregant can have for another. This is the business we are in. The synagogue community provides the backdrop for the sacred to unfold, for the sacred to take hold. So on this Shabbat Nachamu, on this Shabbat of comfort, we pledge not only to listen to one another, but we also turn to our God and we say, hear us now. Hear our prayer. We say, Baruch Ata Adonai, Shomea Tefillah. We praise you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, for you are the one who listens to our innermost prayers. Amen.